Hi, this is Dennis with Second Chance Tackle. Today you're going to look at a personal project of mine. I have a grandson who is becoming quite the bass fisherman and freshwater species, but he's going to be taking a trip down to our New Jersey coastline, and he asked me if he could borrow some surf fishing equipment, and I thought, instead of just borrowing, let's find a rod and reel that's in my stock here that's a good beginner's reel. And don't worry about it if it gets dunked in the surf or gets sanded or the like, but also is dependable enough that he can start learning how to cast the rods and reels, go do some ocean fishing off the surf, and maybe treasure this one for a while to come because, well, Grandpa worked on the reel. So what I selected was a reel and rod and reel combination, and I found at a garage sale. It wasn't a big deal. It was relatively inexpensive. It's a combination. This is a Ryobi. The rod is a Ryobi RS480, and the reel is a Ryobi Silver Cloud. It's the SX4N. The rod and reel is probably 20 years old, and I got it at a reasonable price, thinking that, well, I would repair it. And then I get this note that says, I'm going on vacation. Can you lend me some equipment? I can do better than that, right? This one features a one-touch handle. You simply take the handle, rotate it, that little silver knob there, you rotate that, and that will collapse the handle for you. Pretty kind of neat innovation, and needs a little oil, as I would expect, but this reel has probably not been fished in quite some time. It's a neat little deal. Somebody took the stickers off of their monofilament, put it on the buttons so that they know what it is. This one at the time was equipped with 14-pound monofilament test, and you know what, that's ideal for the fish that he'll be going for, and I think we'll load that up with 14-pound monofilament when we're done. What we want to do is we want to take this reel apart, make sure it gets a good cleaning. It doesn't look like it's been used heavily, but it has been used. There's evidence here of old dirt and grease and grime. Hopefully we'll get some of that cleaned up. And if it doesn't clean up, well, it's part of the history of the reel, right? It's just a nice patina to have, if you will. This reel is also set up for a right-hand crank. Well, my grandson's lefty, so we can swap this over as well. We're going to start by taking off the exterior pieces. As I do that, I want to encourage you to subscribe to my channel, and if you're already subscribed, thank you very much for doing that. To everybody who's subscribed, you've helped me kind of maintain the channel and bring you these do-it-yourself repair videos and give you a look inside fishing reels, how they come together, how they come apart, how they were made, strong points, weaknesses, so on. Well, this one has been sitting for a long time. That's why I took this side plate screw here that also holds the handle on and hosed it down with some penetrating oil. I can feel that the penetrating oil is starting to work now. You want to make sure that you have the right screwdriver for the slots. If you're using one that's too small, you risk butterflying those, and well, you may just never get that screw back in again. So please make sure that you keep a good assortment of screwdrivers on hand, and that you use the one that matches the slot when you go to remove that. Well, we finally got that out. Hopefully that's the most difficult part of this whole piece. When you do that, we can remove the handle. This has what I call a through handle. It's a bar that passes through the main gear and then is held onto the pole by the screw on the other side. I'm going to do a little bit more thorough spray down of this release button here. It'll just it's a spring-driven piece. All you have to do is kind of work it a little bit and it'll be fine. When I take the pieces and parts off, they go into a parts tray, and that parts tray ensures that I know where the pieces and parts are when it comes time to reinstall them. We have 3 case screws here. We're going to just take those off, and that'll reveal what's inside this reel. So Ryobi still markets on a worldwide basis, but no longer markets in the U.S. In the U.S., they sold their distribution and marketing to Berkeley, which is now part of Pure Fishing, back in the 1990s. So any reel that you find in the U.S. that's got a Ryobi branding on it, well, chances are it's 20 plus years old now, and I'm certain that this one is. This one was made in Japan. Ryobi also has some reels I believe were made in Korea as well. All right, so 3 side plate screws, and then I want to just check on this. This has the anti-reverses on, so I'm going to move that to the off position, and then we'll remove that side plate case. This is why I did that. On the inside of this case, there is a anti-reverse clicker here that needs some grease. I think what we're going to find here is all the greases and oils have either congealed or evaporated. So do a good amount here to get that squirted. I just did a reel with a very similar setup to this. It was the Daiwa, and it was the Daiwa 100R. And boy, if it doesn't look identical to this one in almost all regards. It makes sense. Both of those were in the same era, and they shared a lot of the designs. All right, well, there's a pin holding on this crosswind block here. We want to remove that. Just take out pliers to pull that pin out. And we can remove the axle shaft. That pin passed through the axle shaft. And we can just see there's a whole bunch of old, dirty, dry grease on here. So I'll just start with that. We can also see that this wheel has been used in the surf because there is some sand there. So the next thing I think makes sense is to just take the adjuster knob off and remove the spool. That'll enable me to just polish this up. I'm going to use steel wool with nothing on it. What remains here now is tarnish, and you can't fix tarnish, but just run it over, make sure it's a nice smooth axle shaft. And I think these look like they are pressed in. I don't believe I can remove those. Okay, on the bottom side I certainly can remove the salt, so let's go ahead and do that. It's not unusual to find certain reels will have that piece pressed in for the drag washers, kind of non-service items. That's because of the way that the reel was made, what its anticipated use was, and what they thought of the maintenance schedules to those. They just, in all likelihood, they've just put in a plastic, yeah, I can see it through here. There's plastic drag washers in there, and well, just let them go. All right, this one has the axle shaft removed now. We can take the crosswind arm off. Put all these pieces into my parts tray. We're going to remove the main gear now. That's relatively lightly used. And then we have a rotor nut that we're going to take off next. That looks to be a 12 millimeter. I have a 12 millimeter tool here. This is actually from a Mitchell reel, but works on all reels. And you're going to need a deep socket to remove this rotor. The reason for that is this cup is so deep you can't get a wrench in there to do it, right? So get a deep socket. We'll remove that. And this is one that actually you could upgrade. So this has a bushing in it. If you wanted to swap that out with a bearing, you could do that. Well, the pinion gears come out from below. The bushing is just a solid piece of metal. We're just going to leave that there. And again, another reason why I've selected this reel, other than it just happened to be convenient, and he happened to be asking for it, is that it's a relatively simple reel. You're not going to mess up a lot of things with this reel because of the limited amount of pieces and parts. It's a straightforward design, and you know what? You're going to learn from this reel, and that's one of the things that's good about a reel like this. You're going to learn. You're going to learn what you like, and you're going to learn what you don't like. And then you can go from there when it's time to buy a reel or upgrade your reel. If you found that you were enjoying surf fishing and you wanted to go out and purchase a unit, well, you know a couple of the pluses and the minuses. So for example, this one has a metal case. Well, there's still reels out there made with metal cases. Some of the Penn series are, for sure. I don't remember if it was the the Fierce or the Pursuit, but one of those has a metal case. Metal cases are more rigid. They don't flex as much. They're good for fighting heavy fish. But that word that I just used there, heavy, well, that applies to the metal case too. It's a heavier case. So sometimes you're going to find that after casting all day in the surf, you don't like the weight of the reel. And that would tell you when you go to acquire a new reel, maybe you finally decide you're going to go out and spend the money to buy a new or maybe a good used reel, you know to go for the graphite as opposed to going for the metal case. You may find that you don't like how the reel turns because, well, there's no ball bearings in here, right? And you may want to go for a reel that has those. So these are all reasons why you start small. And if you want to upgrade, well, it's a lessons learned, but in the meantime, you can enjoy fishing with this reel, and it's going to provide hours and hours and days of good performance to you because it's a good design. All right, so we've just greased the pinion gear and the shaft. Time to reinstall the rotor. There's two flat spots on that pinion gear. You need to make sure that they merge. This came off in a traditional counterclockwise manner, so it's going back on in the traditional righty-tighty method, turning it clockwise. Those of you that don't know how to tell analog time, clockwise is moving it away from you. Give it a spin. Look at it. So there's nothing wrong with a reel that has bushings by any stretch of the imagination. While we are working on that, we're going to oil this side plate here where that trip arm goes into the case. Now you don't need to do anything with a bail wire during your typical service other than that. If you find that your bail is not firing, well, yeah, take this off, clean up the spool. You saw that there was some indication of some sand on the inside. Maybe sand has gotten in and impaired the spring. Well, then go ahead and do that. Look at that, nice sharps. So you don't need to do anything there, and I don't recommend you do. And you can put a little bit of oil onto that line roller, even though that one does not have a bearing in it. It becomes good practice for you when you are working on bails that do have line rollers in there. You may, as I mentioned, you're going to learn a lot from this reel. Sometimes folks ask me how many ball bearings should a reel have. Generally, I say if you're going to go on the market today, make sure that you have 3. Where would I put those 3? I put one on each side of the main gear and one up top where you saw the bushing. In this event here, you don't have a side plate that could even do that. You have a kind of a case that's molded to be the bushing on that side. You can see the wear on the main gear here as it passes through and goes with that. If you wanted to, you could upgrade your bushing on this one. If you do, you need to know the inside diameter, the outside diameter, and the height of that piece. And then you can buy a generic bearing. You wouldn't find a direct bearing replacement for this for 2 reasons. One, it's an older reel, so a lot of folks don't even list the parts for the older reels any longer. And the second is that it didn't come with a bearing, so most of the parts that are dealing in OEM specs wouldn't recognize it as a bearing for this reel. We just put a little grease into the slot where that pin is going to ride. We're going to take our main gear now and reinsert. Now we're going to grab that crosswind arm. I'm going to take off the older grease that's there. Not so much about fishing reel service and repair is simply cleaning, making sure that all the parts are good, inspecting, and then lubrication. So if you have a question on this reel or any reel in particular, maybe you're working on one and you're stuck, maybe you're trying to figure out how to get that drag stack out of there, which you can't, or you can't easily, then go ahead and leave that in the comments section. I'll try to answer those questions for you, try to help guide you along. Light coating of grease onto the axle shaft. Don't put a lot on there. The reason for that is that axle shaft is going to pass through the pinion gear here, and when it passes through, it'll scrape off any of the excess that you put in there. It's a very tight tolerance. All right, bring the axle shaft down. You want to align the hole in the axle shaft right there, this one, that hole, with the hole in the crosswind arm, which is above it now. And then you want to center it so that it gets to the back of the crosswind arm and into that groove that we just put the oils and greases. I'm trying to see how I can do this and still show it to you. I don't have the hole lined up at the moment. There we go. That's how it goes. I don't know if you can see that on the camera or not. I'm going to bring it down just a little bit because it's not in that slot yet. Okay, I think we got it now. We'll find out in a moment because we're going to put the case on. If the case doesn't sit tight, because there's a slot on this side that's identical to the slot on the other, and if you don't get that other peg in here, well, it's just not going to ride right. All right, I like to put that in the off position. Bring this case over. Surprisingly, we don't have a case washer there. Interesting. Oh, here it is. I was just almost all these crosswind arms that are this setup have that case washer which holds that in. All right, now we have it. All right, I'm going to move this to the off position. It's easier. Well, it's the on position actually. Then I'm going to flip it to the off. That'll push that out of the way. We'll put our 3 screws in and put that spool back on. We'll line it. Make sure that my grandson has some fresh line. Which brings me to a point: if you're servicing a reel on an annual basis and you're using monofilament, by all means, please change the line on an annual basis. Monofilament is subject to stretch. It frays easily. It gets UV damage. There's a whole host of things that happen with that monofilament line. Monofilament line is cheap, so don't try and get an extra season out of it only to lose that fish that well, may have been the fish of a lifetime kind of a thing. Take your time, change the line when you're doing your service. All right, this one came in without line on it, so that made it easy for me. I'm going to go ahead and put the handle back on. Just kind of thread it through. It's a hex setup on that. That was a little tough coming out, so I'm going to just spray it one more time on the way in, just so that the threads are lubricated and we don't have as much of an issue the next time we go to take this out. I'll turn that on by hand as much as I can, and I'll grab a screwdriver. This one's even got a bigger blade on it, but it works. And yeah, I set it up for a righty drive. If he wants me to move it over to the left side, as a right-handed crank, I certainly will do that for him. We'll find that out. For now, we're just kind of working it through. It's still a little tight in there. I imagine it's from just not seeing the grease and lubrication over time. Not a problem, it will hold it. There you go, we're bottomed out there. Let's go ahead and take that spool. Top water spools, or top of the line drag knobs, top of the reel, take an awful lot of water up top. And that's one of the reasons why I'm kind of surprised this is not a removable drag, because you do want to clean them. All right, the reel looks nice. Let's see how well it performs. So it's an entry-level reel. Came as a rod and reel combination. I have the rod, I have the reel, circa the 1990s. I think this one's going to catch a couple of fish. Look how nice and smooth that is. No bearings. No bearings, nice and smooth. Let's put the anti-reverse on so everybody in town knows when he's hooked up a fish. And let's make sure that our bail trips. It does. This one's ready to go fishing. I hope you've enjoyed that. That's the Ryobi SX4N. It's made in Japan reel. It's a beautiful example of fine engineering that does not use a single ball bearing. Can't wait to give it to my grandson later today and wish him luck as he starts his journey on surf fishing here in New Jersey. So to everybody who's a first responder and essential personnel, thank you for watching. To all, please stay safe, stay well, stay watching, and have a great day fishing. This is Dennis with Second Chance Tackle.